Hi everyone, this is David Young with DY Wood Carving, and today we're going to be looking at how to carve these cute little dinosaurs. These are a lot of fun, pretty easy and quick to carve. Calling them dinosaurs, they kind of look like baby Godzillas, but they're little. You can carve a bunch, paint them all sorts of different colors, and have a lot of fun with them. In fact, I carved so many this week that my wrist started to hurt. I guess you could say I was dinosaur. Sorry, if you don't like puns, I know what to tell you. Anyway, today we are carving these from a piece of 1x1 by 2-inch basswood. I'm going to be using a 2-inch blade from Badger State Blades. This is the 2-inch cliffhanger blade. Relatively new blade for me. I love it, but whatever blade you have is going to work fine for this little pretty simple project. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to begin by marking out some pattern lines on my wood. And I'm going to put a center vertical line on each face of the wood here, just like that. Okay. And let's go ahead and glove up. Before I draw my other grid lines on, I'm going to go ahead and just flatten this out. So if you've watched my other videos, you know I do this quite a bit. Just a simple way to start shaping my wood. I'm going to flatten this front and back side to the wood. Just keep carving those corners down until I get it flat between the two center lines on either side. Right? Now this is one of the reasons why I like the larger blade even on a small project like this, because I can just, really take off a lot of wood quickly, leave some nice flat surfaces. But if you need to take a few minutes longer to do this, that's fine. Okay, so it's flat on that side. I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite corner. Just quickly flatten that out. Flip it around and go the other direction until I get that flattened out there. You can always do, what I'm doing here is kind of going down each side down to that line that I'm aiming for. Then I can come back and flatten it down the middle if I need to. Okay. All right. So that's going to be pretty good. And now I'm going to go ahead and draw on the rest of my pattern lines that I want. So my dinosaur is going to fit in here like that. So on the back side, I'm going to draw a pattern line that just goes from one corner all the way to the other. Now, if you want to use a ruler for that, of course you can. Let's do the same thing on the adjacent side there. About like that. And we're going to remove everything in this area here. Okay. Now on the front side, I want to split this up into thirds horizontally. You can just estimate that, look at it and estimate it if you need to, but you can also measure it out. If you want to go thirds, I think the simplest thing to do is to go 11/16. So you could do 11/16 down from the bottom and 11/16 down from the top. And I'm going to draw a little horizontal line on each of those. So I'm basically just breaking it up into thirds. Okay. Now I'm going to draw a diagonal right there and right there on the middle third. I'm going to remove everything in here and remove everything in here, as well as everything down there and down there. Now we will do quite a bit of shaping after that. But that's going to give me kind of the basic shape of the dinosaur you can see there. So let's start with the back side. I'm going to remove this entire corner off the back all the way from the bottom to the top, down to those pattern lines that I just drew, just like that. Okay. Now in the front, I'm going to do the bottom first, because if I do this middle area first and then try to do the bottom, I'll have some delicate spots there, so it'll be easier if I start with the bottom one. So I'm going to put a stop cut in at the bottom of where those arms are going to be. Carve up to it, and again, I'm moving that entire area under the arms. To do that, I'm going to kind of go off to the side a little bit, kind of like we did to flatten the front, and then I'll have a ridge in the middle, and I can just keep working that until I get it down flat all the way across the front. Okay, so I've removed everything on the bottom of that, and next I got to take this little triangle out here. So same thing, I'm going to put a stop cut in the middle, right underneath where the head is, carve up to it. This time I'm just removing that triangle. Again, it's easier for me to go kind of to the side on one, to the side on the other, and then right up the middle, so I get that out. And so already we've got kind of the basic shape right away for what that's going to look like. All right, but we've got a lot more rounding and shaping to do. So next thing I'm going to start to do is shape the tail. I'm going to draw on at the top on this flat face. I'm just going to estimate about 1/3 of the way across right here. And then I'm going to draw lines so you can see where I'm cutting from this corner down here up to there. And again, I'm just kind of freehanding that, but you could use a ruler and draw that out if you want to. Same thing on the back here, about 1/3 of the way across this flat face. And then I'm connecting that down to the bottom corner of that flat face. All right, and if it's helpful, you can draw a center line kind of down the back here as well. And if you really want to see what we're doing, I'll connect those across the top like that. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to flatten everything between this line on the side and this line on the back. Normally I would go up, about to the middle to do that, but I really want to keep the back of the tail a little bit wider, because when I carve these ridges down, it starts to get skinny, and you can easily lose too much off the back in this step. Make the dinosaur look too skinny, it starts to look like a skeleton, which maybe isn't a bad look for a dinosaur, but anyway. So now I'm just going to flatten that area between those two lines, like I said. It's going to give me kind of the side of the tail back there, just like that. Okay. Do the same thing on the other side, just taking that corner off until I'm getting down to about those lines like that. Okay, so let's just started shaping that tail so it's not quite as hard. And you notice I didn't go all the way down to the very back. That's fine. Leave a little bit of a ridge there, and we'll flatten that out later. Okay. We want to do a similar thing kind of on the front. But what I'm going to do first is to start shaping the head. I'm going to carve in, we can draw that on here if it's helpful, triangle like that. So just at the center of the front of the head, up to the top corner and down to the corner below. I'm going to take those corners off like this. And you're going pretty hard against the grain there at that point, or across the grain. Okay, do the same thing on here, going down into the cut we just made. And it's going to start shaping the front of my nose just a little bit more, like that. Okay. Now I'm going to do a similar thing to what we did back here to kind of start carving that in. I'm going to start at the middle here and just kind of push my knife up and back across. I'm not drawing any lines on that, but you get kind of the general idea. Just kind of cutting that front corners off. And then I'm going to do a similar thing down here into the head and arm area. I'm going to put a little stop cut there first because I'm going to be carving into that. I'm just going to start by about halfway there like that to give you the idea. Keep repeating my stop cut to keep it where it's at. I'm going to carve the arms up to there and the head down to there. So I'm starting to carve kind of back into the side a little bit, bringing some shape to the head, right? So let's do the same thing over here on the other side. Again, it's easier to start a little smaller, repeat that stop cut, and then just keep making that a little bigger and a little bigger. So I've got that. Checking for symmetry, I see that like on this side it's going up a little bit more than the other, so I'm just kind of going back and forth and balancing that out so it's roughly the same. Okay. Now if that hard point on the front bothers you, we can just lop that off because we'll be doing that eventually anyway. All right, so still making good progress on the shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on kind of shaping overall the body from the top to the bottom now, and then we're going to come back and add details from the bottom to the top. So next thing I want to do is start to narrow the head, and I can, I guess, draw this on if it's a little bit helpful, but I'm going to kind of take the corners off the sides of the head, taper them in from, about that line where the center of the nose was. If I follow that back on the sides, and you don't have to draw this on, but I think it's helpful for you to see. And then, about a third of the way across the top. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to take the corner off like this on the side of the head, tapering it up towards the top of the head like that. Now that carve straight across the grain like that, that might be a little bit tricky. You could alternatively push up and across like this. That would work fine too. Just like that. But I'm getting that taper towards the top of the head. Okay, and then the last thing I'm going to do, well, to start this level of the shaping is come to the back and just cut straight across from that same distance down to the top. So I'm starting to get the shape of the head there. Now I've got a good rough shape, but it's pretty blocky. So I'm going to keep rounding that off. And I'm going to start rounding it here. So I'm going to come all the way down here to the bottom of my tail. I'm going to take this hard edge off, just removing that hard corner that I created between the body and the tail all the way up to the head, because then that's going to allow me to have a nice clean facet there, and then I can start shaping the head. So let's get rid of this hard corner on the back sides, and I'm just kind of going to be going around and removing hard corners to round a lot of that off, right? Including on these sides here. I'm getting more of a round head there. Now I'm going to have to deal with the top of the head here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out across at a really sharp angle. This is going to be almost flat, and start shaving the top across like that. I'm going to be left with a little bit of flat at the top there. I'm going to take that off. Now, one of the things that I want to try to do is I think it looks good if the head is kind of tilted up a little bit. So the way I've done this, I've got this little bit of a hard ridge here. What I'm going to do is take that off a little bit, and then I'm really going to try to work my knife. And this is a little bit tricky. You want to make sure you have a hard, strong knife to do this, but I'm going to be going straight across the grain. So I'm going to kind of go deeper in on the back of the head and then roll up. And you can see that. So I'm creating that shape up there. And then I'm going to take this kind of hard corner off the back. But it's giving me that sense that I'm kind of looking up a little bit, so that head is tilting a little bit further up. But I still don't want these hard corners I'm creating, so I'm just going to gradually shave those off. Okay. Now you can shape that, to your liking, but I like to leave some nice big clear facets on my carving. I'd like you to know that it's been hand carved and see all those nice knife marks and everything else, right? Okay. So now I'm going to start shaping kind of the bottom of the half of the head, and I'm going to put a stop cut here right where the head meets the arms or the neck, and I'm going to carve up to it from the side of the head and the side of the arms down like that, just kind of pinching in a little bit further back from what we had before. Same thing on the other side, trying to maintain symmetry. Okay. And then I'm going to come across this, and I'm just going to pinch in from maybe 1/8 of an inch down and up above the neckline. I'm just going to pinch that neckline in. Keep putting stop cuts across, pinching that neckline in like that. Okay. And that's just going to separate the head out a little bit more, right? Once I've done that, I'm actually going to come down and flatten these arms up to be kind of in line with that. And do that across the front too, across the side of the arms. And that's going to help me keep the arms kind of going back just as far as the head does, which will kind of keep it all in proportion. So as I've cut deeper into the neck, I've cut the arms up into it like that. Okay. So that's pretty good for the bottom of the head. I'm going to go ahead and round the sides just a little bit more here as I see those. Maybe now I'm going to round that snout just a little bit more from what I took off at the beginning. Come over here and do a similar kind of thing on the sides here. And then to finish shaping the head, I'm going to add kind of a notch in for the back of the head right here. Kind of separates the head from the tail. So I'm going to go kind of right to this corner here that I naturally created where I went up, and I'm going to put in a hard stop cut that's angled down kind of towards the sides of the head on either side. So I'm going to put in kind of a hard stop cut like that, angled down, and then I'm going to do a V-cut notch in there. Now it's a little odd because this top cut's going to be going straight with the grain and the bottom one's going to be going kind of straight across the grain. So take your time with that, be careful. And I'm just going to extend that until it gets a little wider, about like that. Okay. I want to slant this down a little bit towards the bottom of the neck, so then I'm going to add a little bit of an extension on that to each side. That adds a little bit of a movement down, and I'm not going to quite connect those cuts. I'm not going to connect the back of the head to the front of the neck, but I'm going to kind of angle it down towards there. So we get the idea of the entire shape of the head, right? So it's pointing down towards there. And again, once I've done that, I might come back and just chop off some of the hard corners that I've created. And so now I've got a pretty good head shape going there that I'm pretty happy with. Okay. Just cleaning up those cuts and making sure I've got good symmetry on them. Okay, great. So we're going to keep working our way down, and I'm going to start shaping the arms next. To do that, I'm going to put a stop cut in at about 45 degrees up from this corner straight back, and I'm going to go about halfway across what that front flat face was. I'm going to put a stop cut in like that on the side. And let's start small, just carving up to it from the legs and down to it from the arms, so that I'm starting to separate the arms from the belly and the legs. Okay, so you can see that starting to happen there. And I'm going to keep deepening that until I get all the way down to the corner of the base of the feet. And I'm just going to keep deepening that until I've got nice clean lines coming up from the corner to the side of the arms. Good. Now that creates a little bit of overlap here, so I've got to kind of clean up the bottom of the arms just to keep those lined up and consistent, but that's good. Okay, so let's do it on the other side. Same thing, stop cut up at about 45 degrees up from where the arms are, like that. And start covering up to it a little bit from the legs and a little bit down from the arms. And then just keep deepening that, extending it so the arms stick out, and this tapers all the way up from down where the feet are. Anyway, if it's taking a while, you can feel free to take a coffee drink, which reminds me, why didn't the dinosaur like coffee? Because it was a T-Rex. All right. So we've got those arms kind of separated, and what I'm going to do is try to keep that taper up across the middle too. And I'm going to just kind of come on the bottom and taper up towards the bottom of the arms so that I'm consistent in how I'm coming back from the sides here and the front. That's going to give me some depth to the front of the dino. And you can see that here. We really want those arms to stick out, and then we want the feet to stick out. Okay. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm noticing that the bottom of the arms are a little bit lopsided there, so I'm just going to watch for symmetry, keep separating those out as I can. I'm going to flatten the front of this where my hands are going to go, just like that. And then I'm going to watch for symmetry and try to keep that going so that my arms, when I come back to add the detail, will be roughly the same length. So that's what I'm doing there, just looking to get the front of the hand area flat and looking to maintain symmetry across. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect, but close enough. All right. Next, to do the legs, I'm going to do a stop cut right in the middle between the bottom and the bottom of the hands and the bottom of the carving. Okay, so I'm going to do a cut across there, put a stop cut in, and then a V cut over that stop cut. So what I'm starting to do clearly is separate the feet, and I'm going to repeat that several times to get it nice and deep. What I want is this shape. There's not a lot of room here, so you got to be careful, but I want is this shape where there's a little bit of a belly that sticks out there, right, between the arms and the feet, right? So I want to get that indent here between the arms and the feet. So I'm going to repeat that a few times, get it nice and deep, again, trying to make sure that I've got symmetry all the way across. Okay, how I make that cut is going to determine the angle and the shape of my feet and the symmetry of my feet. So I'm just looking at that. I've got pretty similar width all the way across there. All right. So I'm good with that. Now I'm going to start pinching in the feet. So I'm going to do a angled cut across the side of that. You can put a stop cut in that corner, coming up from the feet and down from the belly like this a couple times. Now we can really see on the profile there that nice cut in for where the little belly is and where the top of the feet or legs go, right? So again, put a little stop cut there at the corner where they come together, carve into it across that corner, across the top of the feet. And I'm really getting that shape good. Good rule of thumb is if you kind of go down the center of the thing here, I'm carving the cuts in for the bottom of the arms, the top of the feet, down to about the center line of the side there. Okay, so I'm gonna check it from the front for symmetry. Again, I want to make sure that everything is coming out about the same. I'm going to clean up my cuts in the corners there, make sure they're nice and deep. Nice flat surfaces, just like that. Might give me a chance to see. I want to clean up some of the higher cuts right above it. And I always like to, when I see things, I like to fix them as I go, so I don't have to spend a lot of time when I'm done cleaning up the wood boogers and things like that. All right, great. So the next thing I'm going to do before I start kind of shaping the feet a little bit more is I'm going to add the separation of the tail. So you notice that we've got a notch cut in here for the tail. And my goal is to really make it so you can see daylight in there. I'm going to notch that tail up so we can tell the feet and the tail are different pieces. So it might be helpful here. I'm going to come back to this point where the tail is angling up into the sides of the feet. So a little bit back from a true center line, a little bit back from where those feet are extended to. Draw a line up on either side. And I can even draw a line connecting across here because our goal is to go all the way across. And that just helps you see a little bit of what I'm doing. And then I'm going to make a little bit of a tricky V cut across this corner here. So put that stop cut in and start small with this, like that, to start separating. You're cutting against the grain actually when you're doing this. So it's a tricky cut. Take your time, hold your hand still, make sure your knife is nice and sharp. I'm just going to keep extending that until it goes up till about the middle of the belly is kind of what I'm aiming for. So the top of that cut is kind of going up to where the little belly is sticking out. Okay. Let's repeat that on the other side. And I just want to take my time here and be careful. I don't want anything to break. Then I'll end up with a Tyrannosaurus Rex instead of Rex. Okay. So we've got that V cut up to about where the belly is. All right. Now I want to extend this across, so I've got this gap across the bottom. So I'm going to put this stop cut across here. And then it's easier to start on the corners here like this. Cut those out instead of going all the way across. So I'm going to do like this and like this. Okay, and then I can kind of cut a V cut straight across the top. Now again, I'm cutting straight against the grain here. That's a little bit tricky, and I want to watch out for that. Okay, so I've got a bit of a notch there. I can see a little bit of daylight, but I'd like to get that a little bit deeper still, so I can extend that down, especially on the corners like this, and get those through to the bottom. Okay, and now I can see a little more daylight there between the tail and the feet. And so now I just want to clean those up. Now I've been carving kind of against the grain to make those cuts. To clean it up, I can go with the grain and carve up along like this to try to clean that up on each side. I can clean those up like this. Okay, and I can take off the hard corners that I see on the sides of the feet as well as the sides of the tail. And then if I see anything in here that I want to clean up, I can do that. Okay, so that's pretty good. While I'm there, I'm going to kind of just take a little bit of the hard corner off, going back to the tail on both sides. We're going to shape the tail a little bit more at the end and add some texture, but that gives some nice roundness to it. All right. So now we've shaped kind of overall the body shape of the Tyrannosaurus, and now we're going to come through and add some detail from bottom to top. So let's start with the feet. I'm going to put a stop cut right in the middle here, center this, and as I cut those in, I'm going to work it back until I'm a little bit, not all the way back, but pretty close to getting as far back as where the belly is. And I'm really watching to try to be symmetric again, and how deep I'm going on either side so that one foot doesn't end up being a lot wider than the other foot. Okay. All right, as I get back towards the back of the feet, what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it around. I'm going to stick the tip of my knife straight in like that, and then I'm going to cut a triangle out the side. So again, I'm sticking my knife straight in up to the belly. Be careful not to cut across the belly. And then I'm doing a triangle across between that. And then if I draw my knife along the edge of the belly and the foot, then I should be able to separate that chip like that. Okay, let's do the same thing on the other side. I already did the line up the middle. I'm cutting across there like that. Now you might repeat that cut a few different times. You might, like I have, get a little bit of a chip in there you've got to clean up. That's fine. So we'll repeat that a few times, but that gives you a nice angle on the back of the foot like that. All right, so now I'm going to just clean that up a little bit, extend those cuts, clean them up. So I've got a nice flat area between those. I'm going to taper the front of my foot on each side just a little bit. You can see how that's starting to look at the bottom. You can see I've got a little bit of lopsidedness. That one is narrower than the other, so I'm going to narrow this one out a little bit. Try to keep them equal. And then I'm going to cut a flat straight down the front so that I've got a flat spot on the front. I want that area to be able to carve the toe claws in. Okay. And then I can tell that this one's not quite as wide as the other, so I'm going to try to widen that up so that I get about the same amount of width on each of those. Okay, good. So that's pretty good for my feet. Let's move up to the arms. We're going to do a similar kind of process to separate out the arms here. I'm going to put a stop cut straight in the middle of the arms, cut into it from each side, work my way up, trying to stay as symmetric as I can, up to about the center of the chest area, like that. Okay. Then what I'm going to do, you can see I cut this little triangle out to kind of define the top of the arms. I'm going to put in a stop cut coming straight perpendicular to that like this. I'm just going to stick the tip of my knife in, and it's going to be kind of similar to what we did at the top of the feet. So just the tip of my knife going that way and this way, from the center line going out in both directions like that. Okay. And then I can cut, because I have this cut that I've made down the middle, I can take a little triangle out here like that. And I can take a little bit of a triangle out here like that. And that's going to give me the entry point that I need to then extend those cuts. And I'm just going to keep pushing the top of the arm back up into there and then make a cut like that. That's coming up across the chest. I'm going to do it on the other side. And so if your first cut isn't super clean, you've got the opportunity to clean it up as you do it here. And so I'm cutting kind of across the arms, adding another surface to the width of the arm, cutting out of the middle. Now you can see I'm getting little pieces here. So I'm just going to repeat those cuts and keep cleaning them up until they get clean. Now we want to avoid the temptation to pry. Not prying, I'm just trying to brush out what's left there if I can. But I'm not going to pry, because this is where you could easily chip your blade. You want to be really careful with these cuts. The dinosaur's starting to get a little bit anxious about it looks like. You could say it's a nervous Rex. Anyway, all right. So we've got pretty good separation on the top of the arms there. And you can keep working that down, working out your cuts, clean them up there as you need to. I'm going to go ahead and separate just a little more on the bottom of the neck there while I'm here. Like that. Great. So now on the front, I'm going to first just kind of lop those down. And then I'm going to do a similar kind of thing where I'm cutting up towards the middle. So I'm going to do a cut that goes straight back here. And this one is a little bit tricky because we're going far back, but I'm going to cut just with the tip of my knife. I'm going to cut up into the bottom of the hands here and here. Okay, so that's not flat across the bottom, but it's kind of pinching up and in there, right? And now I've got that general shape. I can round them out a little more. So I'm going to flatten the fronts a little bit. I'm going to come on the side here and I'm going to get rid of these hard corners, make them flat coming out. Like that. Okay, so the sides of the arms are a little more flat. And then what I want, similar to how I want a flat surface on the front of the feet, I want a flat surface on the front of the hands. So I'm going to come here, I'm going to lop those off so I've got a flat surface on the front of both hands. Okay. And then once I've done that, I feel like I want to deepen this just a little bit more. So I'm going to deepen those cuts and then flatten out that area right under the hands. All right, pretty good. Separate the bottom of the hands just a little bit there, and you can round those out and shape them as much as you want, but what I really want to make sure I have is this flat surface on the front of the hands. See, now I got a little piece in there. You can see how I want to do this. I want to make a clean cut and get that piece out. There we go. Without breaking it. Okay. Good. All right. So now I've got really all of my shaping done, and I just need to add my smaller detail cuts across. So we'll start on the bottom and work our way up. What I'm going to do for the feet, some small, you can either do 2 or 3 little V cuts just straight across the front. It's going to make little claws on the bottom of the feet, right? Toes or foot claws. Just repeat those until they come out. I'm just going to do 2 on each side right now. We'll make them a little bit bigger. So straight in from the edge, a little notch, and one here, like that. Okay. There's my little toes coming out there. On the arms, I'm going to do a similar thing. I'm going to angle them down a little bit across this front, and I'm going to do, I'm going to try to get 3 on here. So I'm going to do 1 right here in the middle, very small little V cut like that. And then I'm going to do 1 small one right above it, like that, right below it, like that. Okay. Slip it over, and you can see I'm kind of angling these down just a little bit so they're not straight across, but it kind of looks like they're coming down. And when you look at them from the side, you can kind of see those ridges as well. So let's do a similar thing on the other side. Got these in. I'm trying to think of a word right now, but I can't remember it. I might need a thesaurus. All right, that was a joke. I'm sorry. All right, so we've got these 3 little ones, and you can see why it's helpful to have it flat so you have room to put those in. Okay, and I can see those bumps from the side, which is kind of fun. All right. Now let's work our way up to the head. Now what I kind of like to do right before this is I'm going to put a little flat cut right where I know I want my eyes. My eyes are going to be kind of in the back corners of the head there. And so it's kind of nice to just come back and make sure I've got a flat area to do that. So I'm going to do that there. I'm going to do that here, and then I'm going to draw on where I want my eyes. And you can see the shape of those. It's going to come kind of straight across the top and then angle down towards the back like this. Okay. By looking from the top, I can kind of see where I drew the ones on for the first side and keep it pretty symmetric for the other side. All right. And these are fun eyes. They kind of look smiling because the way that they're tilted up. And pretty simple triangle cut to cut them out. So I'm going to put my knife straight into the corner of that angle and then pull it out. Same thing on the other side. I'm going to put the tip straight in, kind of rock it forward just a little bit to where that line is and pull it out. So I've got cuts along each of those lines. Then instead of cutting the whole triangle out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut just the back part out like this. So I'm going to cut into that from there. Okay, you might need to do that a couple times. Make sure you get the whole piece out. I'm going to do the same thing coming up towards the front of the eye like that. Okay. And you can extend those a little bit if you need to. You might need to take a couple different cuts to do that. Make sure that you get it nice and clean. But then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to repeat those cuts in the corner with the tip of my knife like that. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to try to just make a small triangle cut in the back. So that deep part of the triangle gets really deep and I get a nice deep shadow there. So it looks a little bit like there's an eye back in there. Okay. And I love carving the little eyes like that because it gives the impression of the eye. You can see it pretty clearly. But it's not difficult. It's not going to be hard to paint. It's not going to be difficult to carve, and you get a nice little simple happy looking eye on the side of your happy little dinosaur there. Okay, so again, those are my two side cuts. Then I'm going to repeat with a smaller chip out of the very back of the eye. Got a little bit of a loose piece in there, so I'm going to repeat my cuts till it comes out just like that. You can see it better on the camera than I can in my hand. There we go. All right. Next up is the mouth. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come about a diagonal from the center of the eye down here about halfway towards the bottom of the mouth. And I'm going to angle it down like that. That will give me the impression of a smile. All right, so I'm going to do that on both sides. And then I'm going to kind of connect it across the bottom like this. And having it curl up like that gives me the nice kind of, looks like he's smiling, right? So I'm going to start by putting a stop cut there. I'm going to make a few V cuts that are just going to separate that. Careful on these on the bottom because you really are on the bottom of the snout here. You're really carving against the grain again here. And if you're not careful, you could break through and lop off the top of his nose. You don't want to do that. So just do what I did there. Take a few careful steps to make sure you get that. You can always make the cut bigger. You can't make it smaller. All right. Just repeat that all the way across until we've got that nice smile coming up both sides like that. Okay. Good. And now we're going to want to carve in the teeth. So the way I've carved the teeth is these little chips coming across the bottom. He's got a bit of an overbite, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to come right up from the corner of the mouth. I'm going to take the tip of my knife and I'm going to stick it in right there at the center of where I'm going to want that tooth. So it looks like that. Okay. Then on each side, I'm going to take the tip of my knife and carve a little triangle up towards the bottom of the mouth. And then if I put my knife right along where that stop cut was, that little chip will come right out. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, centered on that first cut I put in, like that. and like that. Okay, and there's my little tooth mark. So I'm just going to leave space, go over a little bit, and do the exact same thing. Do it a little bit quicker this time. Like that. Okay. Great. After I do a couple, I'm going to go around to the other side, do the same thing, one right up from the corner of the mouth. Now you could always switch to a different, smaller detail blade for these cuts if you want to. I'm really choked up on the front of this one, as you can see. This knife still works well for that. You're going to want just a little nice small tip on the front of your knife to do these cuts. Do the next one over, like that. And then the reason I'm starting on each side, getting a couple in, is because I want to just kind of gauge how many I want across the middle here in order to keep everything even and have them spaced pretty well. So I did kind of 2 on each side, and I'm looking at the middle there and thinking if I do one big one in the middle, that's going to be it. And it's a little bit awkward to get to, right? So I'm sticking my knife down the middle and then up and on either side, straight across. I have to repeat those cuts a little bit. There we go. All right. Now I would come back and repeat a couple of these cuts, clean that up a little bit, but we're getting a little bit long here and I want to keep moving. So there's our head. We're done to everything except for the tail. All right. So I want a nice, if you can see this, I've got a flat surface along the back of the tail and then a flat surface on each side angling off towards the sides. So I want to be careful not to make this too small, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the bottom. I'm going to push in and roll up. So I've got just a little bit of a flare and a little bit of a more flat surface on the back of the tail. So this is why at the very beginning I said, don't worry if your cut doesn't go all the way across the back, because we're going to flatten this out a little bit at the end. And I want a nice flat surface, again, to take the cross cuts that I'm going to put in for the texture on the tail. So that's good. So I've got the flat surface there, and I've already got a flat surface on each side like that. If you don't have those, you could come in and repeat a cut like that. And I just like to think about how I'm setting up these cross cuts and how they're going to look across those other facets. So I'm going to start by putting 3 horizontal V cuts in for the tail, and I'm just going to go right in the very center, and I'm just eyeballing it between the bottom of the tail and the top of the tail, put in a horizontal stop cut and carving up and down to it. I'm going to repeat it a few different times, trying to make sure that I'm being symmetric and actually horizontal, so you could draw those in if you wanted to. All right, and you just get this great look with the notch in going across those 3 different surfaces, right? I'm going to do another one halfway between that one and the top. And then the key here is I really want to see that flat surface that I put up the back. I want to see that flat surface on each one of these. So put that in there like that. Another one down here like this. So I've got those 3 kind of big ridges. You can see that like that. Okay. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put these little tiny notches on either side of these. So I'm going to make a bunch of really little V cuts. Put a little stop cut here, and I'm just going to make a little tiny V cut on the middle of that corner there. And it's easy just to hold it there and put it at the same spot on each one of those 3 ridges like that. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to do the same thing on the top side of each of those cuts. There we go, 1, 2, 3, and that's done on that side. So let's flip it around and do the same things over here. Now again, you might want to reach for a smaller detail blade for something like this. I don't really mind choking up on a bigger blade as long as it's got a nice tip for these little details. You can still use it, right? Flip it around. 1, 2, 3. And I love these little notches because they pick up the shadows and they look great when you dry brush them, which we'll talk about in just a second. All right, so that's it. That's my carving, right? You can see that great texture on the back. That'll pick it up. So yeah, a few notes about painting. So I like to paint these just a solid color. Easiest thing to do, take your acrylic paints, water them down however you want, paint them a complete solid color, and then after they've dried, dry brush them. So you can see the dry brushing really picks up the back, right? If you're not sure how to dry brush, you can find another one of my videos or look it up and watch one of the other great videos on dry brushing that lots of people have out there. But that picks up those little white things on the back. So that's it. Told a lot of dinosaur jokes. I didn't tell any Godzilla jokes, even though I feel like he kind of looks like baby Godzilla. So why doesn't baby Godzilla like bland foods? Prefers something with a little bit of a bite to it. All right, that is it. Thanks for watching, and happy whittling.